Hey, what's going on guys, Chris here, back in No Man's Sky with a brand new video, and today I want to discuss No Man's Sky from the perspective of the new generation of consoles. There's been a lot of talk in the past few days about the upcoming tech, about all of the progress that both Sony as well as Microsoft are doing in this regard, and I kinda want to discuss how all of this influences a game such as No Man's Sky, because you might think that it's not going to have an impact on it at all, even though it might be backwards compatible. But on that aspect you might be wrong, and both of the new consoles might make a huge impact when it comes to No Man's Sky, to how we play it, as well as how it could all change to fit the new technology. So yeah, let's just jump into it, and as always, if you enjoyed this video, a thumbs up on it would be super awesome. Also, a quick reminder that our March giveaway is still going strong, and you can go ahead and check it out by following the links in the description down below. From there you can simply choose the game of your choice, and in about a week from this point I'm going to announce the winner over here, as well as via the email address provided. As always, a huge thank you to Instant Gaming for helping me with these giveaways. Anyway, I do want to start things off with a few key points about the new consoles and how they can all improve upon the current games, especially No Man's Sky in this case. Even though I can totally see Hell Games already dropping a patch to support the new tech in the new consoles once that does happen, but even if it doesn't happen, there's still going to be some net improvements for all of the console players out there, and even more so for PC players. I'm going to explain that in just a little bit, but both Sony as well as Microsoft have announced that not only will they bring older gen games to their consoles through to, of course, the backwards compatibility support, but also they will bring improvements to all of those games in certain areas, like for example performance, boot and load times, more stable frame rates, even high resolutions and improved quality. And keep in mind, this without any intervention from the respective developers, which honestly sounds really amazing. Now, if you're a PC player yourself, or even more so if you have a fairly powerful computer, you might be thinking that all of this talk about the next generation of consoles and all of these new technologies isn't going to influence the way you enjoy these games and how you experience them. And you might be wrong on that one, because it actually does make a lot of sense, and it actually does influence a lot how we experience games on the PC, depending on how well they can be handled on the hardware that is present on the consoles. So in the case of multi-platform releases like No Man's Sky, developers also have to take into account that whatever they implement in one version of the game has to be supported through all of the versions and all of the platforms. In this case, base PS4 as well as Xbox One included. That's one of the reasons why, for example, we're seeing a similar base limitation both on the consoles as well as on the PC, even though the PC can more than handle a way higher base limit even compared to what we have now in the game. And this is something that is achievable even with the usage of mods. It doesn't just stop to base limitations though, it can go as far as the way biomes are generated, of the amount of vegetation that can be present on a planet's surface at any given time, and pretty much anything else in between. This doesn't mean that there's no difference between these platforms, like No Man's Sky for example definitely has an improvement in terms of lobby size, frame rate, stability and load times, but everything else in terms of features and how the game is played is pretty much consistent and has to be kept consistent across all of these platforms. While in the next generation a lot of these restrictions would be taken away, and here is where I kinda wanna go over a few examples that were given by Mark Cerny in his PlayStation 5 presentation from a week ago, and many of these would definitely fit a game like No Man's Sky. So a lot of AAA companies create these sizable maps for their games, a lot of which can't be handled by default by the hardware on the current gen of consoles. So what they do is to resort to very creative measures of actually breaking those maps, those huge maps, down into smaller chunks and interconnecting them with something called loading areas. For example, a game like God of War handles this through various means, but all of them boil down to the same concept, and you will see a lot of tunnels, passages as well as caves in between sections of the map that you have to traverse, and as you traverse them the game actually loads the next area in which you're going to finally end into. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense, it's not immersion breaking or anything, and you're still in control control the whole time. No Man's Sky unfortunately doesn't handle it in a similar way. It pretty much handles it in a more old school kind of way, where each solar system is its own level, and when you're warping between these, that's pretty much a loading screen, even though it is animated. And the same goes with pretty much any other type of intergalactic travel, as all of the systems in No Man's Sky are pretty much instances of their own, which yeah, kind of breaks immersion a little bit. You kind of feel isolated in a very huge universe that should otherwise feel very expansive. But there's other examples here that I kind of want to give on how the game could immediately benefit from the new generation, and then also go over some other things that could be introduced as features. First of all, let's go over more stable frame rates. Currently, the frame rates on the PlayStation 4, even on the Pro version, is, let's just say, lackluster to the very least, because it does feel very sluggish, very slow when you come down from something like 60 FPS constant on the PC version of the game. The Xbox One X, for example, could handle things much easier, as it most probably runs it very close to 60 FPS, but everything else beneath it is kind of sluggish, and again, it can ruin your experience if you're coming from the butter smoothness on the PC version of the game. At least in terms of frame rates and frame rate stability, this could be a net increase on the PS5 as well. The next improvement that we could also immediately see would be in terms of actual texture streaming. One of the major problems that No Man's Sky has always suffered was how things load in the distance. Let's just say you travel from outer space onto a planet, or even on a planet's surface. Oftentimes you will see pop-ups happening all over the place. If you travel down on the planet, you will see how terrain starts to be generated in front of you, because obviously the game and the consoles and the hardware wouldn't be able to handle all of that distance and still give you enough detail. The same happens with terrain generation and vegetation generation on foot. Many of you've tested this, but if you travel too fast, especially with a fully upgraded jetpack, you will see that at some point grass stops loading entirely because it just can't keep up with your speed, and oftentimes you will see yourself crossing over naked terrain because grass wasn't able to load yet, and it takes a few seconds to actually catch up, and that can also be very immersion breaking. But it doesn't just stop there. Vegetation in general from a certain distance stops being rendered altogether, and even from a certain point there's some really ugly lots going on. The next one, and also very important, could be the limit of our bases. Currently a lot of the base limits are tied into the hardware limits, so you can't really build too many 3D things on the ground, because yeah, it takes a lot of computing power to actually keep all of that at a stable frame rate. In this case, with the new generation, it would be a totally and different story. It would basically let us build way bigger cities than ever before, and maybe even give Hello Games finally the opportunity to add cities in No Man's Sky without actually having to worry about the overall performance. Finally, the biggest change that I'm going to go over, at least for the Series X, which apparently can add ray tracing elements to older games. Well, this is probably like the biggest one for No Man's Sky. Like, just imagine No Man's Sky going through a similar lighting change process as it is, for example, with a game like Minecraft. Probably it's not going to be such a huge difference because, well, Minecraft by default can be played on pretty much anything, so it does have a lot of headroom to kind of be added upon and expanded upon with all of these cool effects. But a game like No Man's Sky would definitely see a benefit in terms of reflections, and especially so in terms of that water. So water is like one of my biggest gripes when it comes to this game. It's one of the reasons why I kind of don't like playing on water planets, because the water just looks horrible, even though I will give props to Hello Games for actually fixing it over time, but it still doesn't look as good as it should for a game even in 2016. But there's more that could be added through new features that will be supported by the new hardware and the new tech. And I'm gonna go back to the example with the system travel from a few moments ago, and what if Hello Games finally made inter-system travel possible by doing it manually? So what if you traveled from one system to another manually, like not just go through a loading screen, as in having a bigger size of the galaxy kind of being condensed into one single region that you could travel to with your ship or with your freighter without having to go through a loading screen. That would be really awesome, or at the very least, at the minimum, we could possibly see reduced loading times in these warps, but again, that is just the immediate effect. The other one with the manual travel inter-system would be something like a feature. The other one would be adding actual simulation to the solar systems. Currently everything is kinda static, from planets to the actual skybox, which wasn't the case before the game actually came out. Apparently No Man's Sky was supposed to have fully rendered solar systems with rotating planets, a real sun, but that was taken down for performance reasons, so now that there is enough headroom, we would possibly see this happening, or at the very least maybe in a sequel. But just imagine the possibilities, like planet orbits, planet rotations, physics for various celestial bodies. Like, what if asteroids in our space weren't static anymore and instead they rotated, they collided with one another, maybe even like collide with your ship and influence their path and trajectory. That would really be awesome and very fun. Anyway, this has been pretty much it with today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. As always, if you did, also don't forget to comment, like and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one.